Hey guys, Dewey back here. So what we're gonna do today is reconnect the wires that we cut for the Y-axis to make the wires fit through the holes. Here's one of them that I cut. The wire's already spliced in, has the heat shrink on it. This is for the Y switch. There. So the first thing we're going to do, it's going to be these two wires here. These four are for the stepper motor. These two are for the switch. We're just going to reconnect the housing to it. Alright, now we're just going to shrink the heat shrink onto it to protect it. Now we just do the stepper motor wires. I'm going to do the red to red. Heat shrinks are already on there. Blue to blue. Yellow to yellow. And green to green. It's just basically reconnecting the wires. Simple. So let's solder it back there. Now just put the heat shrink on and we should be done. Now that that's done, what we're going to do is I'm just going to solder the tip of these. This is for the hotbed, and these will go directly into the screw terminal over here. I'll show you which terminal. So I'm just going to put a little bit of solder on it just to help it from not de-threading. For these are going to be polarized pin connector. That's for the thermistor for the hotbed. So in the bag that was in the transformer box, you'll have the 2 pin housing and 2 polarized pins. So we're just going to add that to the wire and make the connection. it's in place. This is done, this is done, this is done. All these wires are done. And let's do the power, the DC power thing here. Plug in. So the one that's positive leads directly to the middle pin inside of this adapter here. And you know, if worse comes to worse, what you could do is just plug the transformer into it and check the leads to see if it's negative or positive. Just gonna go ahead and connect these two wires. This wire, the wire you use for this is gonna have to be able to handle 12 amps. Because we're using, if it's with the hotbed, you need at least 12 amps. So this wire is probably about, I'm not sure what gauge it is exactly, but it's just a little bit thicker than this the wire for the heating pad. But if you have, you know, the same gauge as this heating pad wire here to power the heating pad, that should be more than enough for you. Nothing too thick that's needed. So I'm just going to solder these on and put the heat shrink over it. I think you need to be careful with this one too, because you don't want it to get too hot, so the plastic on the adapter there would melt on you. So I have the wires in like that. I'm just going to keep a couple spots of solder on there. I'm just going to pull the heat shrink down and heat shrink, get it all down. So this is what I had. We soldered the negative and positive to the, it's just not focusing. Soldered the negative and positive to the ends of the adapter switch there. That's where your transformer will plug into for the power supply. I'm just going to put another piece of heat shrink over it. If you don't have heat shrink, you can just go ahead and use electrical tape. No big deal. This is what I have. So this would actually go right next to these hose connector here. If you can see it, it'll go on this hole right here. Yeah, I'm gonna just put it in for now, but I think we're gonna want to make all the connections for these switches first, or the motors and the switches and these wires here. Make the connections before we tighten this down, but I'm just gonna do that for now. And I think everything is ready to fully connect. For the momentary switch, what I was thinking about, it was supposed to be a momentary switch that belongs right here, right on top of the USB port. But since we have a fan running, the pins that I'm going to put it on, it's going to be these two pins. I'll disclose that later. It's going to be, the fan will always turn on when the motherboard has a power supply. So my thing is to, instead of adding the push button switch for the reset button on the board, I'm going to add just a turn it on off switch to cut the power supply to the board. So that way we could just, turn on and off the machine to give it power or no power. You could actually do both if you want. Either or, you could do the switch or the reset switch for the motherboard, or you could do both. So if you were going to do both, you could just drill another hole over here or another hole over here, and then just put in both. Not a big deal. So as of right now, I'm not going to do anything, but most likely I'm going to probably use this switch here. The next thing we're going to do is the resistor and thermistor for the hothead. Let's push this back here and move this forward. This is for the thermistor here. I'm just going to strip the wires. It's already stripped for me. I'm going to put some heat shrink on it. You know what I'm going to do? Yeah, I'm going to put some heat shrink on it first for this one. Just bear with me here. What's this? Alright. Use this as the table. Let me zoom in so you guys can see here. So I'm just going to connect. Polarity doesn't matter on these. Okay, put the heat shrink on. So we have the one end. Now let's do the other end. Let's give it a little bit of solder. You guys can see it. Let's put it over here more. Let me just move the whole machine. It's good. That's good. Now we're just going to put the heat shrink over it. One's in. Cut the tip of this off because the solder is too thick up there. Okay. Now we're going to do the resistor for it. I'm just going to mix up some JB It's JB Weld that dries in 5 minutes to cure. It's called JB Quick. If you don't have that, there's other adhesive or epoxy that you can use in place of the JB Weld that I'm using. You could also use Kapton tape to hold everything down. For some reason I can't find my here's one. Where's the other one? Where's the other one? Alright, so I just have a little piece of cardboard. I'm going to mix up the epoxy for the JB Quick. Let's do the resistor first. Resistor wires, we're going to need some heat shrinks on that. Better hurry up before this dries out. This is not going to be the heat shrink I want. Let's just try this one. I'm just going to run this up the wire. Let's put some of this JB Weld on this resistor. Just a little bit around it. And let's just put it through the resistor hole here. Just like that. You know what, I'm going to let this dry first, and then we'll go ahead and make the connection for it. But also I'm going to put the mister in place also. I'm going to put a little bit of this JB Weld stuff. And there's just a little hole here where the resistor goes. And it just sticks like that. So I'm going to give it 5 minutes, let it all dry, and we'll come back to solder the resistor. Alright, now that the resistor is cured, the JB Weld for the resistor is cured, I'm just going to solder these wires to it, the leads to it. There's no polarity to it, so it doesn't really matter which wire goes where. Just strip these a little bit more. Going to kind of twist it around this wire here, just like that. Just put that in place. Good. And now twist this other one around the resistor wire. Bend these resistor wires too much. You don't want it to break off on you. Now just put the heat shrink on. And shrink the heat shrink. push this back here like that. Keep that like that. And let's pull these wires down so we get rid of the extra slack. This is like the mister here. Put the yellow one first. Let's put the white one. Now for the hothead, let's put the yellow one. Bring this up to the chin. Now let's do the black one. And there we go, our hothead is done. Resistor, the mister in place, and get rid of this. Now we're going to do the board. Of course, when you do the board, you're going to want it to put it in position first. You guys can see it here. You're going to want it to put it in here first. And in its spot first. These are held into the frame with 440 screws, 1/4 inch 440 screws, and 440 standard nuts. So 4 of them. And yeah, you're gonna put the board in first and then make all the connections. But just so you guys can see, I'm gonna make the connections out here so you guys can see a little bit better. It's not gonna work. Let's zoom in here. Alright. So the first thing we're gonna do, we're gonna connect the stepper motors. The stepper motor, it's gonna be extruder, the geared extruder motor, the Z stepper motor, the Y stepper motor, and the X stepper motor. So X, Y, Z, and E. So here's our Z, as I labeled, will be right here. Extruder will be right over here, the last one. This is the Y. The Y will be right here. The X will be the last one over here. Again, we have X, Y, Z, and extruder. Next thing is going to be the switch for the X. It's going to be these three back here. The switch for the X is going to be the closest one to the USB port. And then in order, that's X. And then the next one is going to be Y. Which this is the Y one here. I didn't label it, but I could tell because I just reconnected it with the heat shrink. Because that's the one we had to cut. And then the next one is the Z. X, Y, Z. So from the USB port, it's going to be X, Y, and Z, and these three back pins here. Here it is, the Z. And that's why I said to put this DC adapter thing here. And afterwards, you make the connections. That way, this thing is not blocking the housing here to go in place. And after that, you could just screw this back in place like that. I'm not going to do that now because I'm going to have to put all this in there. I'm just doing this so you guys can see it. And then we have over here is our hotbed. Is it a hotbed? No, it's not a hotbed. This is nothing. So let's do the thermistor. Let's get rid of some wires here. This is for our thermistor. thermistor for the hotbed, which is the first one here, closest to this backing. So this is for the thermistor for the hotbed, and this one here is the thermistor for the hothead, which is right here. Is the 2 pins one. I'll try to get the camera afterwards and show you the connections. After that, we have our power. So if this thing was in there, the negative wire will be the closest. It's going to be the first screw terminal here, closest to the USB port. That's going to be for our power source. The closest one to the USB port is going to be negative. The second one is going to be positive. So let's get a flat head here. So I'm just going to untighten these screws here. Negative first. And then positive. Just screw it back in to tighten it. And then we have our oh, you know what? This is for the resistor. This little portion over here. Yeah, this is for the resistor. And the hotbed, polarities don't matter, goes in this second screw terminal here. So I'm just going to loosen it up, both screws, and just put the leads in there. Tighten that, and I gotta cut this. There's a little bit of solder on the tip there. Too much solder. Tighten that. This pin, this is for the fan. It goes to one of these pins back here. I'm not sure which one right now, but I'll let you guys know when I release the document to show you where everything goes. But let me grab the camera so I can show you closer. So this is the power source goes into here. The negative one on the far right, closest to the USB port. Positive here. This is for the hotbed, to power the hotbed. Polarities don't matter. Hothead resistor goes right here. This is X motor, Y motor, Z motor, extruder motor. This here is for our thermistor for the hothead. The second one here in red and black that you see, that's for the thermistor for the hotbed. Back here we have our X switch, stop switch, the momentary switch, the X, Y, and Z. X closest to the USB port, Y the middle one, and then Z the last one over here. And that's what it should look like. And this is our power, which is connected there, which we would just put in this hole over here. I'm trying to do it with the one hand here. Put in that hole. We're going to tighten it down with that. There's the washer there, and there's the screw down there. We're going to tighten that down. That way when we plug it in, it's going to bring the power to this screw terminal here. So that's it. Next thing we're going to do is calibrating the machine. Hey guys, Dewey here. What we're going to work on is the assembly of the Eventorbot. What I have here, the tools that I'm going to need are you're going to need, we have a tape measure. This is to measure the holes and the wires to cut it and to define the screws, the linear rods, cut the belt or whatnot. We have a set of Allen wrenches here. Just standard pliers, needle nose pliers, wire cutter. This is for the wires, and just Phillips tip, 1032 socket tip, flathead, 1032 nut socket, and just 2 of these. I'm gonna also, just for my convenience, I'm gonna use one of these also. It's just a little drill. The first thing I did was the polarity of the steppers. Just basically changing it. How you do that is simply, I'm using a safety pin here. This is a safety pin. This is the stepper motor here. Like I stated before, the yellow one stays in place. As of right now, the yellow one's going to be on my far left, which is over here. And I'm going to disconnect the blue, green, and red. Those 3 are the far ones on the right. So what I simply do is I just kind of push down with the pin in these 4 holes here. You could just push down, kind of slant it a little, bend the pin, and you should be able just to pull the wire out, just like that. Now I'm doing the green one. I just did the blue one on the far right. I'm going to do the green one. Green one's out. And now the red one. Put it down like that. This one's not working. Oh, it's out. Okay, this one just needs a little bit of repair here. Alright, and there we have it. The 3 wires that we need to change the sequence of is out. So now that the yellow is on our far right, the correct sequence, the next one should be blue. So it will be yellow, blue, blue. You'll hear a snap when you stick it in there. Red and green. Again, yellow stays in place. Alright, so we have the yellow far left, then the blue, then the red, and then the green far right. So these are done. I already took these out, so I just need to arrange them again. We have blue, red, green. Blue, red. You'll hear a little snap in green. That's 2 motors down. And 1 more motor. Blue, red, green. It's going from yellow. Yellow, blue, red, green. Yellow being the far left. Second thing I did was the switches for the axis. We have, let's put this safety pin back. Here we go. The lengths for the wire, I believe X and Y, the lengths for the X and Y wire for the switches is 25 inches. And for the, wait, that makes no sense. Oh no, the Z and Y is 25 inches. And for the X, it's 30 inches. Because that's the farthest axis away from the motherboard. This is all tangled up here. What happened? Oh well. So basically I just connected the 2 ends to the switch there. Soldering was kind of hard. If you leave the tip on too long, it's gonna melt this plastic part here, and this metal piece here kind of gets loose and it could fall out. So what I did was I just kind of wrapped the wire around it and then just heat shrinked it around it. But for the polarity of the wire, it's gonna be the 3-pin that was included in the motherboard box. The 3-pin housing. Each wire goes on the opposite end. The farthest to the left and the farthest to the right. The middle one, we do not do anything to it. So it'll look like this. One far left and one far right. Oh, just untangle these when it comes time to. Alright, let's get to the build. The first thing I'm going to do is the legs for the Eventorbot. We're going to do all the stuff that goes on the outside first, and then we'll start working on the axis or whatnot. Footings. These are the footings here. One will go like this. Let's do this one first. These screws are, I believe, 1032 quarter inch. 1032 quarter inch. For, yep, 1032, not quarter inch, 3/4 inch. So, there's going to be one, it's going to be for all 8 of them. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of them. So let me find the 1032 quarter inch. In the screws, you're going to have the biggest screw you'll see, the biggest one in diameter is going to be the 3/8, which is just a set screw. It's black. And there's only 2 of them. There's, I believe, 4, yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 16ths, which is the next one, which looks like this. And then the next largest ones are your 1032 screws. Those are the most common one that you would find in this kit, because majority of the parts are connected by 1032 screws. So you should have no problem finding it. This looks like the 3/4 here. I'm just going to confirm it with the tape measure, and yes, it is what I did. So I found one. I'm just going to go ahead and find the rest of the 8. Just match it up with this screw here. We got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Nope. That looks like a 1-inch one. Nope, 1 inch. 7, 8. You know what? I'll find the rest of them also, just so I don't have to sort them out later. These are all socket heads. 1032 stainless steel socket heads. Found a couple, so I'm just going to put these off to the side so I know these are 1032 3/4. Just going to leave it over here. We're going to need the 8 rubber footing that's in the hardware bag. These things here. And the 1032 lock nuts. So those are also the most common lock nuts. I think there's 20. Is there 20? There is 20, yeah, 20 1032 lock nuts, and I believe 4 440 and 4 832. So this is obviously a 1032 lock nut because it fits right into the screw. So we need a couple of those. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, you could definitely tell what screw is screw and what nut is nut from the size of it. So we have 8 there. So let's begin. We're going to need the rubber footing. It's just going to go in like this. You don't have to tighten this down all the way tight. I mean, the weight of the machine itself is going to keep the rubber footing in place. We should have done this first. Let's do this for both of the feet first. We'll do this first here. Rubber footing into the outside of the foot on both sides. And we'll do that to both foot with the 1032 3/4 inch screw. And then these are also secured down by lock nuts. These 4 here. Yep, lock nuts. So let's just put that in place. That in place. Push this back so push this more towards the middle. Alright, now let's tighten it. I have one of these. Let's use this. This is the 1032 socket for the nut, and then this is a 1032 socket for the screw. So I'm just going to tighten these down. Alright, let's do wrong way. This, now let's put the 3/4 screw in here. This is also going to be 1032 3/4 with the lock nut. Oh, got the footing. Oh, you guys can't see that. Alright, let's bring it closer, maybe. Okay, so I just put the foot on there. Put the 1032 screws in the footing, just like that. Push it through the hole. We have enough thread, just a little bit. Now we need our lock nuts. Let's just screw it on for now by hand. And see, this right here is already good enough. You don't need to go too much on it. Like I said, the machine will hold most of it down. There'll be some crucial parts to this build. The next one is a crucial part. For this one over here, because our Z motor is going to be sitting right here, we're going to use the same screw. It's going to be the 3/4 one, 1032 3/4. But we're going to use just the standard nuts. Instead of the lock nut, we're using the standard nut. Standard nut is over here. These are the lock nuts here. So we're just going to use the standard nut for this. Got footing here. So the last two. Screw it down a little bit. So we have some thread down there. And this one, you do not want the threads to, you want the thread to barely pass the nut just a little bit. That way the thread is not sticking out so much and it's hitting against our Z motor. So right now, it's pretty good actually. And you know, these rubber foot are not going anywhere. We just reverse this and bring it back. Doesn't have to be too tight. This will go out a little bit more. our footing's done. The next thing we're going to do is the spool holder, which goes right in the middle of these two holes. These screws are going to be half inch, 1032 also, but half inch. We're going to need two of them. So let me find the half inch one with the tape measure. Is this the half inch? This is the 3/4. Here's the half inch. Is that half inch? Looks like half inch. So I got two half inch, and it's also held down with lock nuts. This is half inch. Come on. I think there's only two half inches in here, so this one's half inch. Here it is. It wasn't even on the thing. What's this? 3/8. Here's the half inch. Yep. So I got the two. We'll grab the spool holder, which is this. The spool holder. We'll put the bolts in here like this. Just like that. You can see it. Put it in like that. There's two 1032 lock nuts. There's another one. Alright. Tighten it. Pretty leveled there. The next thing is going to be our motor bracket for the extruder. For the extruder motor bracket, for the screws for it, it's going to be the only 1032 that has the hex. I believe it's also half inch. Yeah, half inch hex bolt. So let me find the other one. Hex head like that. Let's put it through these. I'm just putting it through these holes here. You can see it. So these two things are sticking out here. We're going to take our motor bracket. It's going to be facing that way, just like that. And these are also, I believe, lock nuts. It's a lot harder to do things with lock nuts, but you know, once it's secured, it's down. So just take your time doing it. It'll be better. So just put it on for now. And I will use one of the pliers to switch this up. I'm going to use one of the pliers to hold down the screw while I'm tightening the nut there. I'll just use that. Really tighten it, kind of just level it. You could just do it by eyeball, it's not important. It's more for looks than anything. Tighten it. Let's bring this up a little bit. Alright, that's good. Well, this might be easier. Should be easier. There you go. So that's in. Let's do the this hose connector in like that, and you would have a 10mm nut. It's the biggest nut that's out there. It's the biggest nut in the hardware list. So I'm just going to screw this down into it. And just tighten it over here. It's pretty tight. What else? Let's do this here. The belt tightening thing, contraption for the x-axis. It's the only 1032, or it's a 5/16 screw. It's the second biggest one for the x-axis. The first thing we'll need is a 1" in diameter washer. It's the biggest one we have. The second one will be 11/16 in diameter, which is the second biggest one. We'll need a ball bearing. Ball bearings like this. There will be 3 in the kit. All 3 are the same. We'll need another 11/16 and another 1" one, and it'll be like that so far. Now we will also need 2 jam nuts. 2 jam nuts and a standard 5/16 nut. So I believe there's only one 5/16 nut, which will screw right directly into this, and 2 jam nuts. The difference between the jam nuts, it's about three-quarter of the size of the standard 5/16 nuts. So the 2 jam nuts is smaller in height than the standard one. So we'll screw down 2 jam nuts onto this thing here. That's 1 jam nut. Here's the second one. And after you have the second one in, just push it up there and go like that. And now, well, let's do the motherboard. Let's do the motherboard. Alright, motherboard. Here's the motherboard. We have the motherboard right here. We need our nylon standoffs. These are pretty obvious to locate. They're just these cylinder things. They look like plastic that the motherboard will sit on. We'll need 440 screws. These are the smallest one that has the socket head to it. So there's going to be 8 of them total, I believe. No, there's going to be 12 total. So let's grab, I'll show you in a little bit. We have these 4 here with the flat head. It's kind of tapered in like this. If you can see it, it's kind of beveled in, so that way it could kind of sit flush onto, this is what goes on top to secure the motherboard down. Kind of just sits flush down into that motherboard there. So I have 4 of those. And then let's just say the standard one, which is it looks like this. It has a round top. It's a socket head. Round top, 440. Another way to find out if it's 440 or not, just you can screw it into the nylon tube or the standoffs, because these are tacked standoffs. I just need another 3 of those. 1, 2, 3, and the other 4 is to actually secure the motherboard into the frame. So what we're gonna do first is let's put the nylon onto the motherboard, just like that. Like I stated before, the only problem that you would have is probably distinguishing the 440 screws to the M3 ones. The 440 has a socket head, the M3 has a Phillips head. So these nylon standoffs are in. This one I might need a Allen for. Just like that. Just tighten this down. Tighten this down. And the other one here. That's what it looks like. We have our 440s through the metal plate into screwing on into the nylon standoffs. Just like that. And the motherboard will just sit right on top of it, just like this. USB port is right here. So it just sit right there. Yeah, in the future, I would like to explore with other boards, and the only thing we'll have to change is just this tray. So that would be no problem. We could either print it, or I could have the metal manufacturer do it for us. So that's not a big problem. Couple companies, this company sent me a PrinterBot board, and I just haven't had time to test that out, but once I have time to do that, we could do that. There's also another company that sent me one. They actually sent it to me overnight. It's a really nice looking board actually, LCD control. It's a little bit more expensive, but it looks like it's capable of doing more things than this board could do. But like I said, if we want to upgrade the board, there'll be no problem. We'll just print a new motherboard tray or have the manufacturer make one for us. So I'm just putting these 440 screws in the motherboard here just to secure it down. Hope I'm not jumping the gun here. That should be good. Let's just put it here. If we need to take it out later, we can take it out. No big deal. And I think the next thing we're going to do is probably work on the X-axis. Alright, this is done. The X-axis, the gantry for it, it's, you know, this is the Z, the one with the E that goes like this, and this is the X here, the one without the Z, or the E. So for the X-axis, we have two tabs, the smaller one and obviously the larger one. The larger one is about 1.5 inch. The smaller one is about 1.25 inch. So the 1.5 inch one, the larger one, is going to be facing on the outside, just like this. And these tabs actually go inside of the frame, like that. Just kind of have to push it together like that. And then the 832 screws would actually screw right into those tabs that we see, because these tabs have the pin nuts on it. So the 832 screws. 832 screws look like this. Short 832, 1/4 inch, with a flat kind of beveled head there. But let's work on the X carriage here. Alright, crucial part, make sure the longer tab is sticking on the outside to the far right of the machine if you're looking from the front. We're going to need 2 of these rod support. This thing here, this actually tightens down to, you know, hold down the rods, linear rods. Need 2 of them, 2 sets of those. Also make sure, well there's 2 different kind of it. You're going to want these tabs here. This is for the turn off switch. The push button switches. You're going to want one tab to be facing on the outside, this way. so farthest away from me. The other tab to be facing the same way. So we want the push buttons to actually be in the back of the gantry here. We need our X carriage. This is our X carriage here. The only difference between this and the Z carriage, this is the Z, this is the X. The Z has a longer, I don't know what to call that, but it's longer. And the X is just kind of directly in the middle there. So, X carriage, Z carriage. And you can see the difference. So we have our X carriage. We need the top plate for the X, which is just this. This flat piece here, these tabs here push the push button. That's the top carriage. The top carriage goes on top of it like this. Like that. And we need the belt. This is what holds the belt. It looks like this. And it will, you want the belt thing, piece, to be sitting like facing this way, towards the back. Because the belt's going to go in a loop like this, and it's going to tighten over here. Loop like that, tighten over here. So we want this facing towards the back, like that. So, yeah, that piece, the longer piece, will be facing towards the back of the machine. The push button also will be facing towards the back, so that way those tabs could push the buttons when you secure it to these things here. So it would look like this. We need the linear rods. I already have the bearings in here. The second longest linear rod is going to be for the X-axis. The longest one is obviously the Y, because our Y bit is huge. Second longest is going to be our X, and the shortest one is going to be for the Z-axis. So for the X, it is 13 inches. Excuse me. It is 13 inches in length. So these, that, and let's get the screws here. Well, let's put it together first, and then I'll get the screws later. So the bearings will go right on top of this thing here. On the carriage, the X carriage. Might be tough, but get it there. Should we do that? No. Let's tighten the hot head bracket first. We need the hot head bracket. Okay. So obviously our hot head bracket is going to be facing towards us this way, just like that. This doesn't really have, you know, a direction. It's supposed to go either go this way or this way. Let me get the screw for that. Here's another crucial point here. It's 1032 by 1 3/8. It's the longest 1032 screws. We have 4 of them. 4 1032 by 1 3/8 inch. We have 4 of them. We're only going to need 2. And we're going to need 2 lock nuts. 1032 lock nuts. So what we're basically going to do is you're going to have to put it connected with the gantry right now. We're going to go through the 2 holes of the hot head bracket. 2 farthest hole from in the back. We're just going to put that in like this. So we have it like this. We have it like that. If you can see it, just like that. And then we're going to secure it down with the lock nuts. That's to help the X carriage and the hot head bracket to stay nice and tight together. This is actually a Phillips. Try to find these in with the socket. That way, you know, we could tighten it more. But they didn't have any in the socket. It is a lot harder with the lock nuts, but once it's down, it's down. Want to tighten it all the way yet, because we still want to adjust the hot head bracket to be leveled. Oh, you can't see what I'm doing. So I'm just basically somewhat in there. Alright, let's kind of level it up before we tighten it all the way down. Push it as much far out as you can. You kind of want to, you know, you don't want to crook it like this. So you just kind of want to straighten it out before you really tighten it down. You want to pull it far out as possible. That looks good. Good. Alright, now let's tighten it. Oh, that would have been easier if I just did that. And I kept it like that. Or, let's see. Oh, we're so close. Yeah, or we could just do this. And then we'll put it in the gantry later. So now I'm tightening it. You always learn things. This is probably my 4th build, and I didn't realize that. So the farthest tab goes out here on this bracket. So close. How do we get this bracket out? This bracket went in like that, so yeah, there you go. Just like that. Let me do that again. So after you tighten this, just kind of go down like that and like that. Easy. Far tab over there, brackets facing the right way, and we're done. So now we got that done. That's the other crucial part. We do need 1032 lock nuts to secure this down into the hotbed, just like that. Now we put our bearings, let's do this here. So the rod support with the tab hanging out here should be facing towards the back of this gantry. So it's going to go this way. So we're going to put our rod support in here. That's one. That's another one. And let's just place it in here for now. And let's tighten down this one. This rod support. The screw for that is going to be 3/4 also. Yep, 3/4 inch. We had already had some over here. We have, what happened there? 7/8. Those are 7/8. This is 3/4. Let's find some more 3/4. So I got 4 right here for both of our rod supports. me just confirm that. At 3/4. So the first thing we do is, let's do this. Put these screws up here. And these are also held down by standard 1032. Standard 1032 nuts. Not with the lock washer. Pretty sure. But let me make sure of that. After I kind of get this in place. Yep, standard nut and standard nut. Alright, where's my 1032 bit? For this one, you really don't have to tighten it too much. Just kind of tighten it by hand. And I'll guarantee you the rod is not going to move. I mean, just even with one rod support, it's going to be hard to force it out. So I'm going to kind of push the linear rod to the end of the tab over here. This is the first screw. Just kind of lift that. That should be good. Nothing too hard. Did I put another standard nut? Another standard 1032 nut here. Let's tighten that down. I'm going to tighten this just a little bit also. Go back to the other one. Tighten that. Just very gently. Just like that. And these rods are not going anywhere. And that's only one of them. We have two. So that's what we just did. You see the two nuts up there on the side. We have the nut going through and the 1032 by 3/4 inch screw. That's it. Now let's do the other side. Or you know what? I should have pushed back more actually. I should have pushed it back. See, I can't even push it back. Because we have our because we have this thing, the end cap. And you know what? We actually have room. I didn't need to do that, but I'm just gonna do it just in case. Push it back a little bit. So it's sticking about maybe 2 millimeters past that tab there, but doesn't matter. I don't think. Just again, nice and soft, nothing too much. Because we don't want to bend this metal too much. The metal that's on top, the plate that's on top of the rod support. Now let's put this other one in. And let's line up the hose. Let's put the plate on top of it. Again, making sure that these two tabs here on the rod support is towards the back. Because we want our switches to be towards the back. And if we're going to run any wires towards the back. Alright, that's down. 1032 3/4 inch screw, 1032 3/4 inch screw. We need two standard nuts. You guys can't even see this. Well, not if you can see it from down here anyways. I'll show you guys when we're done. And that's in. So as you can see, I'm not even using pliers to hold the nut down, so we don't need it that tight. And once it gets down a certain point, the rod support kind of just holds the screw in place anyways. So this one I might, there you go. So let's just tighten this a little bit. Other one. There you go. And that's not going anywhere. Here's the other side. This is what the center looks like with the 2 screws. So that's what we have so far. We have our 4 bearings in there. We have our X carriage, the hot head bracket. And now we're just gonna put the brackets in, the bearings into position. It should just go in that rectangular square thing there, or rectangular slot there, just like that. Our X carriage goes directly right on top of that. So make sure these tabs are facing the back. That way you could push the push button, and that should snap on tight. This again, and then the belt plate goes like that, again facing towards the back, facing this way. So that way the belt's gonna go like this, around like that, and we're gonna secure the belt into these tabs here. And these are also, I think, lock nuts. It doesn't say so. Yep, lock nuts. 1032 lock nuts, because those are 1032 screws. And this you don't have to tighten down too much either. Just by hand, kind of. Alright, it's in there. Make sure the bearings are in its slot there. Let me just use this one here. Just tighten it. Make sure it's nicely aligned. Not slanted at all. And there we have, again, you gotta go back and forth with the nuts. Just like it like that. And that's not going anywhere. So now we have our X carriage. Oh, you know what? One thing I forgot. Piece of advice is that before you tighten these down all the way, you want to pull the X carriage all the way to the left and then tighten it down. And then before you tighten this down all the way, the rod support screw and nut, you want to pull this all the way to the right and then tighten it down. As of right now, it looks like I have to do that. Or I actually just tighten this thing too much. So, but you can see, nice and smooth. Yeah, you don't want to over tighten this. You don't want to bend the X carriage too much, so that it's rubbing against the wall. But this is good here. Yeah, this is good. Nice and tight, and with the lock nuts, it's not going anywhere. So our X carriage is mainly done. Let's do the belt for it. The belt for the X carriage, I believe it's 30 inches. 30 inches, 30 inches, 30 inches. Yep, 30 inches. So from the bag, it's going to be the longer or the bigger, bigger belt that was included. There's going to be 2 rows of it. The bigger one is for the X, the smaller one is for the Y. The Y should be pre-cut to 21 inches already, which is needed for the Y. 21 inches, yes. Should be pre-cut to 21 inches already. And for the belt for the X, that's the one that was longer. And just to show you, it's this belt here. So you're going to have to unroll it, cut it to 30 inches. And I already have one that I cut it. This is the X. So how we're going to put the belt in, this is how we're going to do it. We're going to need a flathead. Use this, change this to a flathead. with these tabs here, just kind of stick it in there, push this tab out, just like that. Also with the other one, push this tab out, just like that. Just like that. And from there, so the belt is going to go like this, with the teeth actually facing the center of this gantry. The teeth of the belt. So the teeth is facing, let's just say these 1032 nuts here, these lock nuts. You're basically going to secure it in like this. How do I do this? Yeah, like that. And let me face it towards me so it's easier. It's kind of like this. Or do we want it like that? Yeah, just like that. Just like that. Or we only want one sticking out like this. And after you do that, you're just going to take a pair of pliers and squeeze it back in place. The tab that we took out back in place there. That one's locked down. And this one, same thing. I'll show you once I finish this here. So yep, this belt is 30 inches and that should give you more than enough. Just the exact tension to, you know, adjust it from here or whatnot. That's tight in. And these belts are not going anywhere. And it would look just like this. So that's how the X belt gets clamped in. Just like that. You want to cut these, just make sure you leave one tooth like that, so that way it doesn't fall back in. But this is tight, it's not going to go anywhere, and this should be the perfect length for the axis there. And I think we're done with this. Oh, we need the switch, the momentary switch, and the hot head bracket. Hot head bracket we can do later, but let's just do it now while the gantry is out. We need the... Alright, I'm going to pause this, and I got to untangle those wires. I'll be right back. Alright guys, we're back here. We have our wire for the momentary switch for the X axis. Should be at least 30 inches long, or somewhere around there. It doesn't absolutely need to be 30 inches. But I'm missing a nut here. It's in our belt bag. It comes with a lock nut. If you want to put a lock washer, if you want to put a lock washer in there, you could go ahead. I'm just going to do it. I don't have to. I didn't do it with my first one. But you're just going to put it back here. Probably be easier if you put it in before putting the rod support in. So you guys might want to do that, because this is going to be tough. So I put So we have our switch there towards the back, and when our X carriage slides to it, that tab will hit it to let it know when the X is at home. So the X carriage, let's do the hot end. let me pause this because I'm gonna have to go get a hothead. I decided to go with a 3mm hothead for this one. The only thing we'll need is brass nozzle, Teflon tube that goes inside of this, and the peak tube. Well, the peak tube stays there for now. So we are going to put this just in like that, just like this, and we're going to screw on the hothead. Should be good. And then the hose connector. This is what feeds the filament into the hothead. You know what? You should have done this before you put the bracket. This should have been the first thing actually. Because if you do need to tighten it, you're going to have to... There's 2 grooves on the bottom there that you need to hold. And I can't get to it. Let's do this. See if I can wedge something in there. So put in the hothead before. You know what? I might be able to reach it through here. Let's do that. Tighten this up. But yeah, let's do it before you put on the hothead. It's working. Kind of just wedging the pliers to it. So the peak doesn't slip. It's nice and good. Alright. Let's tighten it a little bit more. Maybe use one of these. Perfect. Good. Perfect. Right. Too tight. Let's face the hothead the correct way here. There you go. There you go. That's what it's going to look like. So the X carriage is basically done right now. Let's put this aside and let's work on, or let's mount the motor for the X. The X motor is going to have 2 PEM nuts. Let's grab a motor. Or I forgot to mark this. Let's mark that momentary switch there. This is the X switch, so I'm just going to mark it with an X and an S. So later on I know that it's the X switch. Let's use this as the X motor. So I'm going to write X, just an X, should do it. What we're going to do is have the wire facing this way, towards the back of the motor. So all the wires could run towards the back of the motor. We're going to have the wires running that way. And to secure down the motor, these are where the M3 nuts come in play. M3 nuts, they look like the 440, but they have a Phillips head. So the small ones with the Phillips head, and it also has a thicker head also. That's where we're going to put that into to secure down the motor to the bracket. So let me just do that right now. And these motors actually have a D slot in them, so we do not have to file it down to give it kind of that moon shape. The D slot there, if you can see it, just kind of like a flat side to it. Let's put our pulley in. For this pulley, we're just gonna go straight down and kind of have it leveled with the shaft here. So the top of the pulley should be leveled with the shaft, and then just tighten it down. Make sure one of the screws line up to the flat end of the shaft. That's the purpose of that shaft. And this is not it. There you go. There's 2 screws. That's 1 screw. And here's the other one. And we are good. Now let's secure the motor. The screws for the motor is going to be, or the motor bracket is 3/8. It's also a 1032 screw, but 3/8 in length. It looks like this is 3/8. 1, 2, 3/8. That's about right. So these are 3/8. I'm just gonna gather the other 2 3/8 there, just so I don't have to measure it again. Here's another one, and here's the other one. So I have 4. Just gonna put it right there. And since these have PEM nuts, you're just gonna screw the 3/8 screw, 1032 3/8 screw directly into the PEM nuts. Let's use this thing here. Everything's good. Just screw it in. Just a little bit for now. Make sure it's kind of leveled. We're good. It's in there. If you want to take a look. There's the X motor there. Hey guys, Dewey again here. We're going to continue the assembly of the Eventorbot, but there's a couple things I want to go through first. That's for those of you who order just the parts itself, that is building your own frame. There are some parts that are going to be different from the original. The only difference is that there are PEM nuts to it, such as this Z carriage here. Try to pop this rivet off. There it is. It's gone. The Z carriage will have PEM nuts. That way you could screw it in there. The X carriage, this is the belt that goes on top. The belt thing that straps down the belt. There's PEM nuts to that. That way you could just tighten it from the bottom. The rod support, they also all have PEM nuts. It's the same metal piece, it's just they have PEM nuts on it. And also, the hex rivets are going to be included also, because that is a part of the Z carriage, or the back plate for the Z carriage. So we are done with these. And for this wire here, I just wanted to point out that the wire for the mister and the hothead, how it's gonna run, if you could just imagine inside of this gantry here, the X belt will be like this. So we will run the wire directly down the middle of the X belt. I think that's the best way to run it. You can run it towards the sides, but I think the middle might be the best way. That way the belt doesn't rub against the wires for the hothead and the mister. Another thing is with the linear rods and linear bearings. The samples I received, the ends were tapered. The rods I received or ordered and came is not tapered. You could taper them off if you want. I didn't for any of the machines I did. But when you do put the rods in the linear bearings, you just got to be kind of extra careful with it, because you can knock one of these bearings inside of here out. So it's not that hard, but just be extra careful with that. And yeah, that's all I wanted to go through, and we can begin assembly. So when I last left off, I needed to extend the wire for the extruder and the fan. The fan for the extruder motor. That's already done. We have everything ran through the channels here for from the pulley, the rod support there. Z motors there. Most of you have already passed this point, the ones that received the kit. So what I'm going to do is just put this gantry in place here. And the next step is going to be to mount the Z motor into place. So I'm just going to make sure everything's tight with all these wires here, so there's no slack. This is for the hothead, the mister. Make sure all the wires are clear. You don't want it behind the gantry or in between the frame. This one might be out of place. Nope, it wasn't. So let's just put this back here. This is the Z motor, which is just right there. The thermistor for the hothead. Let's tighten that up. I just wrapped it around here just so it is out of the way for now. This is for the Z switch. Let's tighten that up. Or you know what? Let's tighten the gantry first. Let's do the motor and the gantry. So the nut for the, or the screw for the, to lock down the motor mount for the Z is a 3/8, 1032 by 3/8 inch. Let's find a 3/8 screw here. This looks like it's a 3/8. 2, 3. Got one. Just need one more. And we got the other one. I'm going to use this thing here. So we're basically going to just kind of lift the Z motor in position here. The front. It's pretty lined up already, actually. Alright, now the Z motor is locked down. Nice and tight. And let's put a couple screws in this to lock down the gantry here. Oops, there goes one. I have to pick up the gantry a little bit. There you go. These are 832 by 1/4 inch flat head with a socket tip to secure it down. Too far in. There you go. Another thing is, this is going to be the hose connector for the wires for the thermistor and resistor for the hot head. It's the biggest nut you see in the package. It's a 10mm nut. Just going to tighten it like that. Might have to use a wrench. Just gonna stick this in here so that the nut doesn't move on me. I need something a little bit smaller. Let's try this one. I think that would work. There you go. Yeah, this is something you could also do beforehand. Just don't have to deal with it. How do I do this? Let's try this. And it's good. Nice and tight. There you go. That's in. Next thing we're gonna let's tighten the wires now. Let's get rid of all the slack. This 1, 2. Here's the. Just kind of pull it. If you want, you could put a twist tie in there to hold everything down. And that's it. Now let's start with the bed. First thing we're going to do is get the motor for the Y. We're going to label it first. We are going let's use this. This is going to be the Y. Just put a Y on it. For this motor, it's just going to be 2 and 3 nuts. And we're going to actually have to cut this housing off of the wire also. Because we're going to have to fish the wires through the Y carriage hose. And the housing would not fit through there, so we're going to have to cut it and then we'll just splice it and reconnect it later. Not a big deal. So just cut it. And we will connect the motor with some M3 nuts. 1, 2. Just 2 M3 nuts. Again, it's the Phillips head one. It goes right here. The spot for it is pretty obvious. And then the pulley for this is actually going to have to be upside down. I'll show you how to do that in a second. Now we're going to do the pulley. Pulley is going to have to be upside down, like I said. Make sure the set screws are in here already. You're basically going to want the pulley as low as possible, maybe an inch, 1 millimeter away from the 1 millimeter away from the stepper motor. We don't want it too far. The set screws were not in there, so I'm gonna have to put the set screws in. Again, make sure one of the set screw is lined up with the flat side of the shaft there. I could go a little bit lower actually. And that is nice and tight. That's our pulley for the Y. We're going to need one of these. This goes on top here. We need the linear bearings. Let me grab that. Oh, you know what? The linear bearings are already on my bed. A bed frame it is. So with the bed frame, you're basically going to slide the linear rod right through the, I think it's 3/8 pin nut. It's going to go through here, all the way down through this hole here and through this hole here. So just like that, all the way down. Hope you guys see that. But here we go. Oh, another thing. About the bed, I totally forgot to do this. You're going to need to drill a hole. For those of you that is part of the second batch, you don't have to do this. The manufacturer's already going to do this. But those of you who have already received the kit, you're going to have to drill a little hole in this tab here. What we're going to do is put a 440 screw in there to that way we could adjust the screw to push the push button for it, for the Y-axis. That's in there. Alright, I think we could put our plate on now. Just like that. And you know what? Let's do the bearings for the Y belt. You're going to need 4 of the 11/16 washer, 11/16 in diameter, 11/16 of an inch in diameter. 4 of those, and 2 of these ball bearings. We're just going to put one right here, one right here, a bearing. And then another one of the 11/16 washer right on top. The plate goes on. I think the first thing we're going to do is secure those bearings down. Oops. Pin nuts go on top actually. So those are these huge 5/16 screw Phillips head. Get it started here. like this. Probably about 3/8 of the way down. And continue screwing till it reaches the bottom. That's down. Okay, now let's lock down this plate. The screws for the plate is going to be, is it 7/8? Yep, 4 7/8 of an inch screws, which look like these. These are probably the only 4 left. So I got 4 of them. 7/8 it is. Push these through. These holes here, and the ones on the back also. These are basically to help hold down the bearing and the plate itself, and these are also lock nuts. This you also don't want to tighten too much also, just to keep the plate down. It's good. I'm going to put the set screws in for the 2 linear rods. I've showed you guys this before. So basically our rods are in place. I'm just going to put the set screw here in the pin nuts to secure the rods down. There's 2 of them. It's big black screw here. Just a little tight there. Let's do the momentary switch for it. It's gonna be this hole on the side of the Y carriage there. Where's our switch for it? Here it is. We're just going to go through here. The polarized housing for this we're going to have to cut also, because we're going to have to feed that through the wire. We'll just reconnect it later. And we need the nut. The only nut that was left here. Here it is. Just gonna put it in position there. So this is what we have so far. There's the switch. See the ball bearings. It's getting heavy now. Now, let's do the 440 screw for the push button. For this little tab I explained earlier in the video. there's going to be 440 standard nuts. And what is this? I'm not sure. There's going to be two different sizes. It's just a long 440 screw. It's the only one that's in the kit. I believe it's 1.25 inches. So what we're going to do first, we're going to put one standard nut in. About, say, halfway in. Just like this. We're going to push it from the front side in like that. And then use the other 440 nut to hold the screw in place. And we're just going to tighten that. So this way we could actually adjust when we want the Y bed to stop at home. And it looks like this. Let me see if I can show you from the back. That'd be easier. Looks like that. So that way, when it comes down, it'll push that button there. The next thing to do is the heating pad for the bed. Let's put the Y belt in actually. Okay, it's actually going to go through this way first, kind of bend it here. Put it through like this, bring it back this way, wrap it around the pulley, bring it back this way, bring it closer so and just pull this one to give it a little help to go through. And I do not have enough slack. Come on. Now let's just bring it back this way. So how could I show you guys this? So basically, you want the teeth to be facing inside of the pulley, of course. It's basically going like this, wrapped around like that. Like this. Kind of like, not a pretzel shape, but... if you guys have a problem, I'll take a picture of it. But it's pretty obvious how to do it. And I'm just going to do this. It's one side. I'll show you how it's locked also. And that's the other side. It's tight enough. Not tight enough. Maybe one more tooth in. Alright, let's try to grab that one there. Got it. Show you the bottom view again. And pretty good. Actually, I'm going to bring the belt, just push it down on the side here, down a little bit. Looks like it's rubbing against the top plate a little bit. And this is what it looks like. I'm probably going to trim this edge off over here. This is one side of the belt. You see what I just did there? Just trim a little. I'm going to trim that extra piece off. And this is the other side of the belt. Same thing. This one doesn't have to be trimmed because I put that one first. You know, if you don't want to trim it, just tuck it to the side. There's an extra hole just for that I put on the frame there. That way, if you do want to delete the extra length in the future to pull for some tension or anything, just keep it. Alright, now let's do the hotbed. The hotbed is pretty simple. Hardest thing is just going to be soldering the thermistor. Let's put this rod away. Hotbed. You're going to choose the better side, obviously. The side that looks better. And from here, from the top view, what we're going to do, we want to go probably, I think it was 1.5 inches. I'm going to mark this corner with a piece of tape. Alright, so we're going to mark this corner with this tape here. So we are going to go 1.5 inches down and 1.5 inches to the left. So that way, if you could imagine this on the bottom, it'll look something like this. You know what? This exceeds that. We'll go 1/2 inch. And 1.5 inches on the top. So let's see. That looks about right there. You know what? 1.25 inches. We'll do 1.25 inches from the front of the plate to the start of this heating pad, and about 1/2 inch from the right side of the plate to the start of that pad. So it looks something like that. But it really doesn't matter. You don't have to be exact. I just wanted to give you something to follow. So this actually goes like this. I'm not even going to measure it. I'm just going to eyeball it actually. About right there. Let me move this back so you guys can see. It'll actually be like this. Just like that. Like that. Yep. So I am going to pause the video, get my soldering thing ready, heat it up, and solder the thermistor on. And this is what we have. Just the connection there. The polarities don't really matter. If you don't have heat shrink, you can just use electrical tape. So what we're going to do now is peel off this sticker here. It is a special adhesive that they put on here that will withstand the heat. So I'm just going to place it basically right in the middle. Just like that. And we're going to put it down. About a ½ inch. I'm just going to eyeball it. And about 1.5 inches from the top there. Doesn't have to be perfect. You don't want to press down too much on the mister. Just kind of around the mister, the wires and the mister itself. Just like that. That's it for our heating pad. Just like that. Simple. So it will go like this. Right on top of there. It's still hot. Put it away before I burn myself. Alright. Now let's put the bid on. Should we put the bid on now? Yeah. What we're going to need for this is, these are 832 screws by 2.5 inch long, and you're going to need there's 4 of them, 1 for each hole, and you're going to need the 440 lock nuts. 832 lock nuts. So I'm just gathering it up here. One more, and we're good. These are the last 4 lock nuts, actually. So what we're going to do is just place this on like that. I would like this over here. First thing we're going to do is put the screws in. And the well nut. Just back here so you guys can see. The well nut basically just goes into the spring like this. You know what I was thinking? I was actually thinking about putting another well nut down here. So there's some cushion between the bed and the spring. I'm just going to screw it in. And we're probably going to leave about that much. I will screw it in about that much. About 1/4 inch, maybe 3/8 of an inch past the spring. That in like that. Let's do all 4 of them. Now from now I'm just going to press this down and put in the lock nuts just to start it off, just like that. So once you get it locked down, I like to pull it up and then just kind of screw the spring all the way down. Lift the screw up and screw the spring all the way down so it reaches the bed, the frame of the bed. Same thing on the other side. And we are going to use our needle nose to tighten everything down. Do this one first. Fully adjust it later. I'm just going to leave it at its highest point for now, because we could always bring it down when we calibrate it. There we go. For this wire, I think we're just gonna go like this. Yep. Alright, we'll just leave this wire here for now. Alright, now let's just run these two wires. The wire for the Y motor and the switch for the Y axis there. It's going to be, I'll show you which hole to run it through. Running it through this hole here, the far right one on the Y gantry. We're going to need a hose connector. I'm just going to push it through the wires through it like this. I should have done these four first actually. Missing a yellow one. And the hole is tapped, so you could just screw this hose connector in. And the length of the hose for this one is going to be 13 inches. So let's measure 13 inches. It doesn't have to be exactly 13 inches. 13 inches is about right there. Cut it. And that's for the hose for our wire. Let's run this wire through. And we're here. Just press this hose into the hose connector. And we're going to need another hose connector. Put it this way. All 4 wires in. And this will screw directly to the motherboard also. Which I should just do right now. It's going to be to the hole that is farthest to the right when the back is facing towards you, which I'll show you. And it is also tapped, so you can just screw it in. Good. For this wire here, it's going to be like this. If you can see. For this wire, for the mister and the hothead, we could take off a little bit of this, so that way we have wires. Enough wire to go through there. Take off about maybe 1, 2, 3 inches of the heat shrink. 3.5. And with our hose, you're going to cut probably maybe a half inch of hose. And it's basically just going to go almost like a sleeve for this heat shrink, so it could stick to the, or connect to the hose connector. It's pretty tight. That should be good. And the hose connector for the hotbed is the additional one that's in the Ziploc bag for in the transformer box. And we basically just connect it like this. Put this through, connect it like that. There you go. This connects to the second hole, which is this. I'm going to tighten down the gantry now. I dropped the screw back there, so I'm going to have to get a new one to replace it, but I'll get that later. I'm going to tighten down this gantry. I did the 2 in front, but not the ones in the back for both the X and the Z gantry. This one. let's do the hose for the hothead. The hose for the hothead for these wires here is going to be 14 inches. So let's do 14 inches. Don't have to be exact. We're going to run these wires through here. The hose again. Run that through. Press this down to the hose connector. And let's do the wire for the filament feed, which is 22 inches. 22 inches. There we go. And one side will connect to the extruder housing, this thing here. The other side will connect to the hothead. This will connect. Let's put the board in here for now. This will run down here. Move aside so you guys can see. Down this hose connector. Down the hole directly below it. Vertical to it. Connect it to the tube. There we go. Perfect. This is going to be for our let's just say thermistor and resistor here. Let me just see. Where have I got pins for it? This is the thermistor. Yellow and white. Which yellow is it? It is this yellow. So this is for the thermistor. And this is for the hothead. Yep. Hothead. Or resistor.